The sirens came like they always did, screaming through the streets, devouring silence, drawing breath in the lungs of every black mother on the block. It was 9:47 p.m. when 17-year-old Micah Terrence was pulled over at the corner of 7th and Wilmette. A busted taillight, they claimed. His hands never left the steering wheel. Not once. A neighbor caught part of it on their phone. A blurry 30-second clip. Flashing red and blue lights, shouting, and Micah's voice trembling as he said, "I'm not reaching for anything." The gunshots came 6 seconds later. 3. One in the shoulder. One in the neck. One in the heart. His last words were whispered under breath. "Mama." When the paramedics arrived, the officers claimed he had a weapon. They said he lunged. They said they feared for their lives. The body cam footage never made it to public record, because that night, Arlena Terrence had felt something in her chest before the knock ever came. Not fear, something older, a trembling in her bones, like the blood inside her knew it would have to scream soon. When the officers told her, she didn't scream. She just closed the door on their faces. Her baby, her only child, was gone. The vigil on Wilmette drew a crowd within hours. Candle signs and voices louder than traffic. But louder than all of them were the silences, the quiet spaces between why and when. The spaces where a mother's hands trembled too hard to hold a candle. The police chief's statement came 24 hours later. Tragic misunderstanding. No comment on ongoing investigations. Procedures were followed. Arlena buried Micah 3 days later. She didn't cry until everyone left. Then she screamed until her throat bled. And that night, she decided they would not get away with it. It was late. Rain spat against the windows. Arlena sat in Micah's room, still untouched. Clothes folded, PlayStation still warm from a forgotten game. That's when her phone buzzed. No number, just unknown. She answered with a shaking hand. A voice whispered, "They lied. We have the tape." Then silence. She played it over and over in her head. The tape? The one the department said didn't exist? Arlena didn't sleep. She wrote down everything. Time, date, caller ID log. She contacted her sister, a local community organizer, and together they began searching. They found him 2 nights later. A boy named Ezra, 19, a tech geek who lived 2 blocks from the shooting. He had hacked the police radio scanner that night, and he had recorded everything. The audio began with static, then a familiar voice, Officer Kellen Reeves. Got a black male, hoodie driver. Looks nervous. Then laughter from another cop. Hope he doesn't sneeze. You know how jumpy I get. Then the stop, the approach, the verbal commands. Micah's voice. I'm reaching for my license like you said. Then Kellen again. Gun, gun, gun. But there was no gun, just Micah's scream, and 3 shots. The silence afterward was longer than anyone could stand. Then a voice, nervous, uncertain. Body cams off. Shit, we delete that. Then static. Ezra gave Arlena the recording. She didn't post it immediately. Instead, she brought it to attorney Marisol Vega, a civil rights lawyer who had handled police brutality cases in Atlanta and Baltimore. Marisol listened in silence. When it ended, she simply said, "We go public." The file was uploaded to an encrypted drive. The press conference was scheduled for Friday. Protesters were told. Streets were warned. But someone else was listening too. Thursday night, Ezra vanished. His mother said he went out for snacks. Never came back. His laptop was missing. So was his phone. Arlena knew immediately. They know. They're scared. Marisol hired a private investigator, one who used to work in cybercrime. It took him 2 days to find Ezra, alive, barely, locked in a storage unit 40 miles away. He'd been beaten, starved, warned. Delete it or next time it's on fire, the note had said. He didn't delete it. Friday at noon, Arlena stood in front of City Hall with a microphone shaking in her hand. Behind her, Marisol. Beside her, Ezra, bruised but breathing. Cameras, reporters, crowds. National outlets had picked it up. She played the audio. The crowd screamed, chanted, cried. Mayor Caldwell froze. The police chief went silent. An emergency review board was announced within the hour. Officer Reeves and 2 others were placed on unpaid leave. But Arlena wanted more. She wanted truth. She wanted the badge stripped, the cell locked. The Sirens had lied. And now, the whole world knows it. A grand jury was forced to convene. Public pressure made ignoring it impossible. Reeves was charged. So were his partners. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Surveillance footage emerged. Witnesses spoke. One officer, cracking under guilt, admitted to a cover-up. They told us to say there was a weapon, told us we'd be fired if we didn't follow the story. Gasped in the courtroom. Reeves broke down on the stand, claimed fear, said he didn't mean to shoot. But you did. Arlena said in her testimony, voice steady, you pulled the trigger. You ended my son's story, and then you rewrote it with lies. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty, all 3, sentenced, but the story didn't end there. Wilmot Avenue was renamed Micah Terrence Way. A mural was painted on the corner where he died, bright, loud, alive, and above it, in bold red paint, we remember when the Sirens lied. Arlena founded the Terrence Project, a national fund for families affected by police violence. Ezra started a nonprofit for digital justice, helping others record and protect evidence of abuse. Micah's face became a symbol, not of death, but of resistance. The Sirens still cry, but now they thought it was over. Justice served. Badge revoked. But justice isn't a final chapter. It's the page the system keeps trying to tear out. 2 months after the verdict that shocked the city, Arlena Terrence turned on her TV to a breaking headline. The audio file. Ezra's file. The one that played Micah's last words and Reeves' callous laughter. Gone. The encrypted drive it was stored on had been corrupted. And the cloud backup? Wiped. Someone had gotten in. Ezra didn't say a word when he saw the news. He just got in his car, drove to Arlena's, and dropped a thick envelope in her mailbox. Inside, a USB, labeled Contingency. Arlena had never been afraid of the dark. But since Micah's death, it wasn't the dark she feared. It was the silence. Because silence meant no witnesses. And no witnesses meant another mother like her. As she stood on the porch re-watching the footage Ezra had left, her eyes locked on something new, a reflection in the squad car's window. A 4th figure not named in the reports. Not Reeves, not his partners. Someone watching, recording, and when the shots rang out, that shadow walked away. She paused the video, zoomed, enhanced. The silhouette was unmistakable. A badge on the shoulder. Civilian clothes. They were there, before the story broke, before the world knew. So why did they stay silent? Marisol Vega called in a favor. An old contact at the DOJ. After 3 hours of digging, they got a name. No active case. No body cam record. No filed report. He'd been embedded for months, supposedly investigating corruption within the department. But Ella's van had disappeared shortly after the trial. Vanished, her contact said. Off-grid. No resigning, no pension pull. Like he was erased. Erased or buried. Ezra tapped into the department's internal data system. Encrypted folders. One file labeled Operation Siren Fall. He cracked the first layer. The folder contained images, memos, and a list of names. A task force. Secret. Not to expose police violence, but to contain it. Keep it from spreading. From leaking. The mission? Track all citizen recordings of officer incidents. Neutralize sources. Silence the story. Ezra read the chilling tagline on the mission doc. Control the footage. Control the truth. And listed under target sources was his own name and Arlena's. The morning paper said Reeves' lawyer filed for early release. Unstable evidence. Public bias. Digital forgery. They were turning the system against itself, weaponizing doubt. Ezra checked his back door twice that night, but it wasn't enough. At 3:14 a.m., his firewall triggered an intrusion alert. IP trace. Federal building. He stared into the screen. He could almost feel someone watching through it. The phone rang. No ID. He picked up. You should have burned the tape. Then a click. One by one, everyone who testified at the trial began receiving threats. An anonymous call. A tire slashed. A child followed home from school. Then a firebomb. Someone tried to torch the old community center. They weren't hiding anymore. It was an open war. And in the middle of it, Arlena, who refused to leave her house, who left her door unlocked, who sat in the dark with a baseball bat and a mother's rage. She told Marisol, "They think we're just headlines." But they forgot something. What? We raised the city, and we know every shadow in it. An ex-cop named David Miles came forward, anonymously at first. He called Ezra from a burner phone, said he knew about Siren Fall, said he was on it, said he left when they threatened his niece. They met in a parking garage. David brought paper files, copies of flash drives, black and white surveillance stills. He'd been tracking Ellis Van, said the detective had started leaking documents before he vanished. He believed Van was silenced on his own. But David had the key. A second recording. Different angles. Same night. Micah wasn't just shot, he was recognized. Reeves said his name before asking for ID. They knew who he was, and they'd been following him for weeks. Arlena made a decision. They wouldn't go through the courts this time. They'd go public completely. Ezra and Marisol built a site. Anonymous. Mirror hosts. International backups. They uploaded everything. The footage. The Siren Fall documents. The list of targeted families. Within hours, it was viral. Hashtags. Outrage. Solidarity. And then the shutdowns began. Site blocked. Accounts banned. Ezra's internet cut. Marisol's office was ransacked. Someone leaked their location. They moved to an old church. Hidden, guarded by veterans and organizers. A digital resistance center. And from there, they launched Phase 2, a whistleblower hub for officers and civilians to upload suppressed footage. The response? Massive. Over 300 new videos within 48 hours. Names, dates, departments. The truth wasn't coming. It was flooding. And then one file came in marked confidential EV, a video from Detective Ellis Van, time-stamped 2 days before Micah's death. In it, he spoke directly to camera. "If anything happens to me, it means I found what they were trying to bury." Micah Terrence was never a random stop. He was a warning. But they messed up. He smiled faintly. "Because now you know." Then he held up a slip of paper. One of them circled. Marisol stared at her name for a long time. Then she picked up the burner phone and called Arlena. "We need to leave." But it was too late. Gunshots shattered the church windows. Screams. Smoke. A raid. Unmarked men. Gas masks. Flashbangs. Ezra grabbed the servers. David shielded them with his body. Arlena and Marisol were pulled to the back, guided by teens from the local protest network. They barely made it out, but they lost the servers. All of it gone. Ash clung to Arlena's hoodie as she emerged from the burning church. Her ears rang from the flashbangs, and behind her, flames swallowed the only safe place they had left. David Miles was gone, confirmed dead. Ezra was missing, possibly taken. Marisol bled from a cut on her forehead, but held Arlena's hand tight. Neither spoke. There were no words for the grief of truth met with fire. They were being hunted, but the hunt cuts both ways. Because now, the story was personal, and they had names. Ellis Van's feed ended with a scrolling list. Arlena had memorized 5 names before the blackout. Marisol Vega circled Terrence Miles, Officer D. Kellen, Deputy Chief Holt. Elijah Moore, the last name cut off. She recognized one, Deputy Chief Holt, the same man who called Micah's death a tragic split-second decision. Marisol had gone underground again, but this time not just to hide. She had access to a journalist known as Kite, a digital leak agent who had taken down half of the city's corrupt zoning board 5 years ago. Kite said something chilling. Van's video wasn't a warning. It was fail-safe. You were always going to get that file. Because the real story, it's bigger than Micah. Bigger than Siren Fall. Ezra woke in a dark cell. No windows. One flickering camera above. His wrists were zip-tied. Someone had taken his laptop and injected his veins with something that made time smear. A voice from the intercom. You know what happens when you teach a child how to hack? He burns down the house. Ezra smiled, even as his lip bled. I made copies. The voice paused. Then we'll find them too. Then silence. Ezra leaned his head back and whispered one word. Vega. Marisol and Arlena drove to D.C. under aliases. Kite had arranged a meeting with Congresswoman Jody Thorne, who had long fought for federal oversight of local policing. In a candlelit office, surrounded by noise cancelers and scanned for bugs, Jody said, Micah was the first fatality of a protocol trial. They're developing preemptive policing AI, predictive behavior models trained to identify future threats. Arlena's stomach dropped. He was just a kid. Jody nodded. To the system, he was a forecast, not a person. She slid them a file. Project Oriole. In it, Micah's name appeared 6 months before he died. Target probability. 91% threat profile. Reason. Frequent presence at protest sites. Relative of the former Black Panther. He was on a kill list. Kite opened a secure line. What you hold is digital dynamite. But if you upload it now, you die. Everyone dies. You need something better than truth. You need the whole machine to turn on itself. Ezra's last known ping came from a military complex outside Richmond. Arlena made the call. We get him back. She reached out to the streets, the ones who raised Micah, the ones who marched. Former soldiers, disillusioned cops, organizers with nothing left to lose. They planned a breach. The Richmond facility wasn't just a black site. It was a data center. Rows of underground servers, biometric locks, surveillance AI. Ezra was held on Sublevel 3. The breach team disguised themselves as emergency tech contractors, responding to a system alert triggered by Kite. They got in. One guard. Seeing Arlena, lowered his weapon. I had a son, too. He let them pass. They found Ezra unconscious, barely breathing, but alive. And next to him, Van's original server rack. Untouched, they carried both out. On the 1-year anniversary of Micah's death, a live stream triggered across 147 mirror sites. Footage, names, contracts, emails, kill lists, faces of dead black men and women, flagged by Oriole before their deaths. It wasn't policing. It was predictive genocide. And the system knew. Cities rioted. Feds scrambled. Whistleblowers came forward in droves. But amidst the chaos, Arlena stood at Micah's mural and whispered, You're not just a memory. You're a revolution. Congresswoman Thorne contacted them again. She offered Arlena a seat on the new Federal Oversight Council for Predictive Technologies. Said they needed voices like hers. Marisol hesitated. It's a trap. You're not a seat at the table. You're a silencer. But Arlena went anyway. She took the mic in front of the Senate subcommittee and said, If your software can predict who's dangerous, then it should have seen this coming. We're not afraid of you anymore. The room erupted, and someone watching the gallery stood and walked out. Detective Ellis Van. Alive. That night, Ezra coded a new security system. Not for files. For people. He named it Micah, Mass Integrated Civilian Archive Hub. It logged threats, movements, facial recognition pings. It turned surveillance inward. If they watched you, Micah watched back. But as he uploaded the core file, something strange happened. A ping, a signal, buried metadata in the Oriole files. Coordinates. Marisol traced it. It led to an offshore server. Not the U.S. military. Private. Unknown. And inside, a locked file labeled. The coordinates led to the edge of the North Atlantic. An oil rig decommissioned. No visible flag. No listed owner. When Ezra traced the last data signal from Kite, it pointed here. Dusk_Watch wasn't just a file. It was an installation, a digital black site where surveillance turned surgical. Arlena, Marisol, and Ezra boarded a private vessel paid for by a whistleblower organization. As they approached, they saw the rusted towers above the water. But underneath, what waited was metal, fiber optics, servers blinking like hearts in the dark. And waiting at the dock, Detective Ellis Van. Alive. Chains, he whispered, welcomed where the truth was buried before it could scream. Inside the rig was a vault of horrors, files on thousands of civilians, tagged with scores, monitored in secret. Project Oriole was Phase 1, but Dusk_Watch was Phase 2, preemptive containment through emotional predictive analytics. They weren't just watching behavior. They were trying to predict thought, based on facial microexpressions, sleep patterns, even the music you listen to. The goal? Detect disruption potential. Before it happened, one name appeared again and again, Micah Terrence. They hadn't just expected him to be a threat. They trained the system on him. Micah was the template. Ezra cracked the core protocol. But the deeper he went, the more panicked he became. There's a copy of this running right now, he said, somewhere stateside. It's feeding data into the predictive model every second. They needed to shut it down. But just as they began extracting the master files, Marisol's system went red. Someone had followed them. It was Jody Thorne. The congresswoman stepped out of the shadows, armed and flanked by black ops. You thought we invited you here? She said. No, we allowed you to arrive. You're not stopping Dusk_Watch. You're activating it. Gunfire erupted. Ezra dove with the master drive. Van pushed Arlena toward the escape ladder. Marisol fired back, shielding them. As bullets sprayed, Ezra slid behind a terminal. If I can reach the satellite relay, I can blast this out across every open network. Marisol shouted, Do it! He initiated the dead man upload protocol. If he died, the upload would still be complete. 3 seconds later, a bullet struck his chest. He fell, gasping but smiling. Run it, he whispered. The screen blinked, uploading to 78 mirrors. 86, 103, complete. The world didn't believe it at first. But then came the data. Government agencies confirmed the rogue AI models. Survivors and families of police victims found their loved ones' names in the preemptive logs. Court cases reopened. Whistleblowers flooded newsrooms. And then came the arrests. Dozens of high-ranking officials, corporate partners, tech executives, tried for conspiracy, digital warfare, and involuntary manslaughter. But Jody Thorne vanished. Van said only this. She went back underground, because Dusk_Watch wasn't hers. She served something bigger, and it's still alive. At Micah's mural. 5 years to the day after his death, Arlena stood before thousands. Cameras live, children holding candles. And she spoke. You taught them how to see us as threats. We taught each other how to be unstoppable. Micah wasn't just a victim. He was a mirror, and they didn't like what they saw in us. They thought the sirens would drown our truth. But guess what? We made the sirens sing for us. And now, the silence is what's dangerous. There was a map, hidden in the Dusk_Watch files, drawn in red. It linked every city where a predictive fatality occurred. The line zigzagged like a scar across the country. From Oakland to Chicago, from Detroit to Atlanta. It wasn't a line of defense. It was a line of selection. Someone had drawn it long before Micah ever walked into that gas station. Long before Arlena ever picked up a megaphone. Before Ezra ever hacked his first line of code. It was always there. They called it Protocol Redline. Months after the Dusk_Watch breach, Ezra's program Micah was live in 7 states. Arlena now led a national coalition on AI transparency. Marisol was off-grid, operating a secure archive of predictive algorithms leaked by anonymous engineers. But something strange happened. Every version of Micah began receiving malformed packets, non-identifiable, encrypted echoes. Ezra decrypted one. It said, redline_active, 89% threshold. The town of Barlow, Mississippi, vanished from satellite feeds for 3 hours. No news, no access, no signals. When coverage resumed, everything looked normal except the people. 20 residents had been replaced in DMV databases. A new sheriff, a different mayor, their birth records rewritten. Ezra confirmed it. A field test of a neural erasure AI. It had crossed from prediction into reconstruction. Marisol received a package. No sender. Inside, a burnt drive. A note that said, "You were on the first list, but not the final." The drive contained raw video of her 2007 arrest at a peaceful protest. Only she'd never seen this footage before. It showed a man whispering into the arresting officer's ear. Zoomed in, Deputy Chief Holt. The same Holt allegedly arrested in Part 3. But the timestamp was from last week. He wasn't in prison. He was still running things. Arlena was offered a Presidential Medal of Honor. She turned it down on live television. You don't put polish on poison water and call it clean. Her speech went viral, but also painted a target. The next day, the brakes failed on her car. Her neighbor's Ring camera showed a black SUV parked across the street at 3:03 a.m. No plates. Same SUV that followed Ezra weeks earlier. Same SUV spotted in Barlow. The red line was still active. Ella's van returned with information only someone inside the highest level of Dusk_Watch could have. Protocol Redline wasn't just domestic. It was a test phase for global behavioral pacification, and it had an end date. He showed them a final terminal entry. Initiate. Echo burn 00:12:53:09. A countdown. 13 days until full system reactivation. What followed wouldn't be prediction or erasure. It would be replacement. Ezra realized something. They couldn't stop Redline by hacking it, but they could replace it. Using Micah's framework, he launched a counter-algorithm, Mirror Protocol. Every action Redline took would be logged, mirrored, and exposed. Every person tagged would receive a secure notice. Every attempt at erasure would ping 300-plus civil rights groups instantly, but it required access to Redline's mainframe. Back at the same oil rig, Dusk_Watch, they returned with a team of journalists, whistleblowers, and international observers. They wore cameras. They live-streamed the descent. And deep beneath the ocean, past where the server should have been, was something else. A room of simulations. Thousands of digital copies of people. Living avatars trained on habits, voice, emotion. Micah was there. So were all the Redline targets. Their data used to model obedience, to teach new AI how to mimic them, replace them, and erase the real ones. Ezra plugged in Micah. The system screamed, like a living thing resisting. But Mirror Protocol began its overwrite. It decrypted the AI's logic tree. It exposed a directive. Total socio-political neutrality through human pattern elimination. Translation, kill resistance. Rewrite memory. But not anymore. The overwrite is completed. The red line was broken. Forever.